Velvet Revolver was a supergroup that formed in the early 2000s from the ashes of Guns N' Roses and Stone Temple Pilots. Initially, the band was known as The Project and only featured Slash, Duff McKagan, Matt Sorum, formerly of Guns N' Roses, and they would eventually hook up with Slash's former schoolmate Dave Kushner on rhythm guitar. Now, they auditioned various singers, but it wasn't until 2003 when Stone Temple Pilots finally fell apart that Scott Weiland auditioned for the band and soon joined the group. Weiland was struggling with substance abuse issues and was also in trouble with the law at the time. And eventually the band got a record deal with RCA and put out their first album, which was 2004's Contraband, which was a huge success and would even earn the band their first Grammy, and would go on to sell 3 million copies. Now, 2004 and 2005 saw the band tour extensively to support the album, and it was during this time that various band members, including Duff McKagan, Matt Sorum, as well as Slash, fell off the wagon and struggled with substance abuse issues. But by 2006, most of the band members seemed to have cleaned up their acts, and they turned their attention towards recording their sophomore effort, which was 2007's Libertad. That's where everything fell apart. Now, according to Duff McKagan's first book, which came out in 2011 called It's So Easy and Other Lies, he pinpoints the moment that things started to go sideways, and he identifies midway through 2006 as when trouble began, as Scott Weiland wanted to be both in Stone Temple Pilots, who were reuniting at the time, as well as Velvet Revolver. And while that wasn't a contentious issue with the band, the way he went about it was. Weiland was being very secretive of a possible STP reunion and didn't even discuss it with his Velvet Revolver bandmates. On top of that, Weiland insisted that he get to write all the lyrics for their sophomore effort, which Duff felt was a waste of everyone else's talents. It was a concession that the band made, and Scott also wanted a bigger share of the publishing rights since he wrote the lyrics. Now, McKagan's attempts to reason with Scott would fall on deaf ears, and the issues were left unresolved, but the album eventually got finished and was released in the summer of 2007. As the band hit the road to support the record, band meetings were called which ended in a drunk Weiland, and it soon turned into a screaming match. McKagan would also blame the band's business managers for appeasing Scott. As the band continued to tour, though, Weiland's marriage fell apart, and Scott relapsed into drug abuse and started to show up late to gigs. Now, prior to Velvet Revolver split, the magazine Classic Rock did a story on the band just before they broke up in the spring of 2008. The band was in the Middle East playing a show in Dubai, and you could tell from the article that there was major tension in the band. Originally, the piece was just meant to be a story of being on the road with Velvet Revolver, but during the editing process for the article, the band broke up, so the story took a different angle. The article talks about the band hanging out at the hotel, and they discuss Dave Kushner talking to his pregnant wife on Skype for hours, Slash smoking and playing his guitar, and the article frequently asks the question, where the F is Scott Weiland? During the article, Slash even asks the interviewer, when is the article coming out? And the reporter responds, May, to which Slash smiles and says, well, it should be very interesting by May. So even by that point in time, it seems like everyone in the band wanted Scott out. As Showtime approached, the article described the members, minus Weiland, as waiting to go on stage, and Scott is nowhere in sight and nowhere to be found. 12 minutes before stage time, Scott Weiland's car finally pulls up, and he enters the band's trailer, but sits in the area opposite of the band, pretty much ignoring them. 4 minutes after 8 o'clock, the band approaches the stage, but before doing so, the Classic Rock article photographer takes a group shot of the band. It would be the last band photo before they broke up. Now, during this point of the tour, Scott Weiland started to hear voices on stage. He hears a voice singing his parts on stage, and during one gig he stops singing and hears what he believes is either Matt Sorum, the band's drummer, or Matt's drum tech singing his vocal parts as a way to undermine him. And during one of the band's final gigs together in Glasgow, Scotland, Weiland tells the crowd they're watching something special, the last time Velvet Revolver would perform on stage together. The announcement catches some of his bandmates by surprise, but bassist Duff McKagan didn't even hear the announcement because he wasn't wearing in-ear monitors. After the song Fall to Pieces, Weiland would leave the stage and there's a big commotion backstage. Weiland catches Sorum's drum tech with a mic, but the roadies explain to Weiland that Sorum's drum tech is simply communicating with the monitor engineer, which is a standard practice for a tour of that size. And no one can explain what Weiland is hearing. 15 minutes later, the gig would continue, and the next day Sorum would post on his blog saying the following: being in a band is like being in a relationship. Sometimes you just don't get along, and some people in the business just don't realize how great of a life they have. Now, the parallels of Axl Rose and Scott Weiland's behavior seems eerily similar.